Rain transformed downtown Chicago into a river of reflections. Neon signs stretching across wet pavement like shattered glass while thunder rolled faintly in the distance, and beneath the glowing entrance of a luxury hotel stood Marcus Hale, perfectly still, his tailored coat untouched by panic, his posture calm and confident in a way that made him look both wealthy and untouchable. The kind of man who belonged in boardrooms and private lounges, not on a storm-soaked sidewalk. Yet to the officer idling nearby, he looked like trouble wrapped in expensive fabric, and Jessica Vaughn watched him from her patrol car with narrowed eyes, already building a story in her mind where his success couldn't possibly be real, and his calm had to be an act. Because to her, expensive watches meant stolen money, and confidence meant guilt. And when she rolled her window down, her voice carried sharp and impatient through the rain as she ordered him to move along like a nuisance blocking her view. And Marcus turned slowly, not startled, not defensive, simply surprised by the hostility, explaining in a respectful tone that he was waiting for his wife who was attending an event inside the hotel. But Jessica laughed in a way that wasn't amused but mocking, the kind of laugh that meant she had already decided he was lying, because in her world, men like him always had stories, always had excuses, and she stepped out of her car with deliberate authority, boots splashing through shallow puddles as she moved closer, her hand hovering near her weapon as though daring him to react, accusing him of loitering, implying he was casing tourists, suggesting he didn't belong in a place this nice, each word dripping with judgment disguised as procedure. And Marcus remained still, keeping his hands visible, calmly repeating that he had done nothing wrong and had every right to stand there. And it was that calm that enraged her most because she was used to fear, used to people shrinking when she raised her voice, used to the badge working like magic. But Marcus didn't flinch and didn't beg and didn't apologize. And when she ordered him again to leave and he refused politely yet firmly, something inside her snapped because power to her wasn't about law, it was about control. And when control slipped, anger replaced it instantly, and she stepped closer into his space, her accusations becoming sharper, her tone more aggressive, suggesting he stole his clothes, implying his wife didn't exist, pushing every stereotype she carried until it was no longer about policy and completely about dominance. And when Marcus finally said quietly that she was mistaken and should step away, her jaw tightened and the badge suddenly felt too small to express the authority she wanted. So she raised her hand and struck him hard across the face, the sound echoing against the hotel walls louder than the rain itself, as a thin line of blood appeared at the corner of his mouth, and the small group of people nearby froze in shock, watching the moment where authority turned into assault. But Marcus didn't retaliate, didn't shout, didn't even step back. Instead, he slowly turned his body around and placed his hands behind his back in silent compliance, a move so calm it unsettled even her for a second. Yet she pushed past that feeling and snapped cuffs onto his wrists with unnecessary force, shoving him toward the patrol car while muttering about criminals thinking they were special. And once inside the back seat, she grabbed her radio and rewrote the story in her favor, reporting a hostile suspect who resisted and threatened her safety, claiming she had to use force, and with every lie her confidence grew, convincing herself she had done the right thing, that she was the hero in this narrative. And by the time the precinct came into view, she fully believed the version of events she created, walking him inside with arrogance, expecting paperwork and praise. But the moment they entered the booking area, something shifted. Officers who had been laughing stopped mid-conversation. A sergeant's pen dropped to the floor, and these supervisors stared like they had just seen a ghost, and the noise of the station drained into silence. And Jessica didn't understand why, until she noticed no one moving to help her process the arrest. Instead, eyes were fixed on Marcus, with expressions of fear and recognition, and before she could demand answers, a senior officer rushed forward ordering her to step back while fumbling with the keys to Marcus's cuffs, unlocking them immediately. And Jessica protested that he was dangerous and had assaulted her. But no one listened, because Marcus calmly adjusted his jacket, wiped the blood from his lip, and pulled a leather badge holder from his coat, flipping it open to reveal a gold insignia that outranked everyone in the room, introducing himself as the internal investigator assigned to clean corruption within the department. And the words hit the room like an explosion, draining color from Jessica's face as realization slammed into her. And in that instant, everything reversed. The power she had minutes earlier evaporating completely as her badge was removed from her chest and her weapon taken from her belt. While Marcus looked at her, not with anger, but with controlled disappointment, explaining that the moment she struck a compliant citizen, she ended her career, and that the false arrest, the fabricated report, and the abuse of authority would now be fully investigated. And as she stood trembling, surrounded by officers who no longer supported her, the reality finally sank in that the man she tried to humiliate was the one sent to dismantle people like her. And the night she thought she was in control had become the beginning of her downfall. While Marcus calmly ordered footage secured and reports locked, announcing that the real work was about to begin, and as she was escorted away stripped of authority, the rain outside continued falling quietly, washing the city clean as though marking the start of justice moving forward. The station that once buzzed with careless laughter now felt like a courtroom where every breath carried tension, and as Jessica Vaughn was led away, stripped of her badge, the remaining officers avoided eye contact, knowing something much bigger than one bad arrest had just begun. While Marcus Hale moved with quiet authority through the precinct, ordering footage preserved, radio logs archived, and reports frozen, his calm presence making it clear that shortcuts and favors were finished. And within hours, patterns began surfacing that could no longer be ignored. Arrest numbers spiking on certain nights, evidence logs showing cash amounts mysteriously shrinking, charges disappearing once money was seized, all pointing to a system that wasn't broken but intentionally rigged. And when Marcus confronted Captain Reynolds, the man who had ruled the precinct for years, the captain tried to brush it off as aggressive policing, claiming the streets demanded tough action. But Marcus laid the files on the desk, showing the same officers working the same shifts whenever large seizures occurred, revealing not discipline, but design. And under pressure, the captain's confident posture cracked, was sweat forming on his temples as Marcus accused the unit of running a quiet shakedown operation, targeting drivers who looked wealthy enough to steal from yet powerless enough not to fight back. And while the captain denied it publicly, the fear in his eyes said otherwise. And when Jessica was placed in an interrogation room with the reality of prison looming in front of her, the bravado disappeared completely, her tough persona collapsing as she realized the command she trusted was already preparing to sacrifice her. And once Marcus offered reduced charges in exchange for truth, she broke faster than glass, confessing that every stop was intentional, every charge exaggerated, every seizure partially stolen, and that the captain demanded monthly targets just like a business demanding profits. And the recordings captured everything as she admitted provoking citizens to justify arrests and funneling stolen money upward. And within days, the footage leaked, igniting the city, with protesters demanding accountability, while media personalities twisted the narrative into a tale of a frightened young officer versus a powerful official abusing authority, and lawyers appeared promising lawsuits, unions rallied claiming persecution, and suddenly Marcus became the villain in half the headlines, portrayed as a tyrant destroying a career over a misunderstanding. But behind the noise, Marcus knew corruption never fought with truth. It fought with distraction. And that night, the warning arrived when a brick shattered his living room window, sending glass across the floor while his wife screamed upstairs. And taped to the brick was a message promising harm if he didn't back off. And as police responded cautiously, Marcus realized the rot extended far beyond one precinct, that powerful people were invested in keeping the money flowing, and that fear was their chosen weapon. But instead of retreating, Marcus followed the trail that never lied. Money, working with a forensic accountant who traced shell companies disguised as cleaning services and maintenance vendors that funneled seized cash into hidden accounts. And after days of digging, the shocking truth surfaced that the largest account didn't belong to any officer, but to Jessica's own mother, a retired woman suddenly sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in structured deposits, revealing the operation wasn't just corruption, but a family laundering enterprise. And in that moment, Marcus understood Jessica wasn't a pawn. She was the architect, designing a system where power and profit blended seamlessly. And the next morning, the courtroom overflowed with reporters, confident the defense would destroy the case with emotional testimony and character attacks. But when Marcus presented certified financial records tracing every stolen dollar, the room erupted. And when arrest warrants were issued mid-hearing for multiple participants, including family members, the defense strategy collapsed instantly. And the final blow came when the captain entered in handcuffs, admitting under oath that the scheme had been Jessica's idea from the start, that she enjoyed the power, enjoyed watching people feel helpless, and used the badge not only to steal money, but to dominate lives. And as the jury watched evidence stack higher, the narrative of victimhood shattered permanently, revealing a predator hiding behind authority. And after brief deliberation, the verdict came back guilty on all counts, sentencing her to years in federal prison, while multiple officers followed her path in chains. And within months, the entire precinct underwent a purge. Illegal quota systems were dismantled, leadership replaced, and transparency enforced. And Marcus was appointed to oversee reforms not as revenge, but as restoration, standing before new recruits reminding them that the badge was not armor, but responsibility, and that every abuse would be met with accountability. And as the city slowly rebuilt trust, the story of the officer who thought she owned the streets became a warning, whispered through locker rooms and classrooms alike, on a proof that power borrowed through cruelty always comes due, and that karma does not rush, but it never forgets. And Marcus Hale walked forward not as a hero seeking praise, but as a man ensuring the system finally served the people it was meant to protect.